here's a recording of what we covered in the Workflow Max office hours to give you a feel for what we've got coming and some of the information we're providing to customers around what's happening with Workflow Max. So over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to cover what is happening, what should I do about it, what are the benefits around changing, and what are my options, and really how do I make a decision around that. So let's be clear on what's happening first. So Workflow Max was announced that it was going to be retired. So they made that announcement in March 2013, so earlier this year. And they said that it would be retired in June 2024. So that's almost just a little bit over a year from where we are now in June 2023. Now, in early 2024, there'll be a new version of Workflow Max become available, and that's going to be called Workflow Max 2. So what is that? So what Workflow Max 2 is a new software where Workflow Max or Xero sold the brand to a firm called BlueRock, and they are currently building a new version of Workflow Max. It'll be called Workflow Max, and it's inspired from that. So it's going to have a few things that are quite important. It's going to have the same pricing. It's going to have the same features, but it's going to have a new, more modern design underneath. And first trials of that will be available at the end of this year or early next year. So one of the other questions we'd ask is what's going to happen to my data that I've got currently in Workflow Max? So if you want to keep it, you're going to need to do something. You'll either need to move it to a new system, and various systems have options around that. Some move clients, some move jobs, some move timesheets, some do a bit of both. But not many of them actually move your WIP calculation, so you may need to do some work around that. Your data won't be deleted after June 2024, but it will be harder to get out. So we would recommend that you access and do something with that data before that date. And come June 2024, you won't be able to log into Workflow Max. You'll need to request your data. So what should I do? It's a great opportunity to review how you're using Workflow Max and redefine some of your processes. Don't go shopping for features without really defining your requirements. Option one is wait, so pause. So if you really like Workflow Max and you're not keen on changing and you're not interested in some new features, you don't really want to invest more at this stage, then wait and evaluate Workflow Max 2 when it comes out in January next year. If Workflow Max not quite hitting what you need and you want some more features, you want the convenience to move when it suits. So maybe you're a seasonal business and that January to June period is really busy. Or you want another option to consider so that you've got a plan B come January this year, then get out and review some of the options. Now, the negative of reviewing the options or what those options will present is there will be an increase in cost and subscription, and there is some change in training involved. Now, what are the benefits of changing right now is you can access some new features that may help your business. And those could include, depending on the type of business you are. So if you're a time-based business, so an engineer or professional services, then resource scheduling, multi-currency, forecasting are all available in some of the new tools that are around. If you are a manufacturing business, i.e. you make items, then you can there's some more tools around importing costs. So you can import purchases, you can manage inventory. There's even a kiosk logo, so you can have an iPad in the workshop, and there's some better back costing options. With all the options that are available, there's some really good integration. So you can integrate straight into HubSpot, into SharePoint, into Zapier, and various other systems. So you can connect one system to another system. And that allows you to bring in some process efficiency. So that's one of the big advantages of moving to a more modern platform. So what are the options that I've got at the moment? So there's a few that we recommend, and we've gone out and looked at all 100 odd options in the market. And if you're a time-based building, we recommend ProjectWorks for professional services firms. If you're an engineer and an architect, then ProjectWorks is great, but you may also want to have a look at Total Synergy, which was designed by architects and engineers, so it has a more of a flavor around that. And another one called Sorco, which is out of the UK, which is more of a graphic design based business. So it's a beautiful looking software. It does come at an increased price, but it has got some quite neat features and some really good integrations into other systems. If you're a manufacturing business, the options are a bit more limited. So if you are a builder or a construction, then Next Minute is a great tool that we would recommend. And if not, and you're using Workflow Max in a variety of ways, then WorkGuru is a really good tool because it's very close to Workflow Max, but it's got far more advanced options around managing costs and even has inventory. One of the features that we like there is if you add an invoice into Xero, you can suck it back into the job rather than to handle it twice. So some really good benefits around your workflows and efficiencies there. There are hundreds of options though, so you can also go to the Xero App Store and look there. And if you're an enterprise firm, so more than 200 or 300 people, then there's some great tools at a cost, things like Oracle NetSuite, Microsoft Dynamics, or Deltrack. If you're a small business, and if you're a really small business with 2 or 3 users, then Xero Projects or Harvest are great tools. If you're a larger business, then Simpro and AbTrack are quite good, specific in industry niches. And it's this balance of, do you pick an industry specific niche, or do you look at a tool that's got a wide range of features and works for your industry? What do I need to consider when moving? So what do I need to think about? So there's a few things. First of all, there's going to be change. So you're going to need to think about the timing of that, the training and the communication involved for your users. Most of the tools are reasonably easy to use to enter a timesheet, but you will need to learn new ways to set up a job and invoice and manage that job. Secondly, around cost, and this is quite an interesting one. So Workflow Max and Workflow Max 2 work in price bundles. So what that bracket price user bundles, I should say. So what that means is you've got 0 to 3 users, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, and 10 to 20, 20 to 30, etc. Whereas all the other tools work in a per user model. So what that means is if you've got, say, 30 users, you're paying around $5 per user for Workflow Max. So it is exceptionally good value. As you move to another tool, and most of those range in around $40 per user per month, you're going to have to pay a lot more. So 30 times $40 per month. There's a few exceptions in that. If you've only got a couple of users, then some of the tools that have a low minimum user count, so 1 or 2, you're going to access some really good features for quite a reasonable price because you're just paying per user. And there's a sweet spot in the 10 to 15 where you're paying about $20 per user per month. And if you move to one of the other tools, you're going to be paying about 40. So the jump is not huge in pure dollar term, but you're going to be access a lot of features. The next thing you want to think about is your setup. So are you going to use this as an opportunity to revise your processes? Have you documented your processes that you do now? Because that's what's going to drive how you set up your new job management system. And the final area to think about is, what about my data? What do I want to move across? Do I want to bring everything, or do I only want to bring a short amount of data through? So how do you make that decision? And so one of the things is no identical replacement exists. There's nothing that's going to be exactly the same as Workflow Max. So there will be compromises and things that you like in Workflow Max that'll be different in another tool. Just like a Mini from the 70s is very different from a Mini these days. So think about how you currently use Workflow Max. What is the processes that you already use? What are your needs based on those? So for your current usage, what's your process around job setup, invoicing, the volume of jobs and how you report? What do you do outside of Workflow Max? So around resourcing, budgeting, and how you manage documents. And finally, think about, is there change in your market? So are you changing the way you price? Are you moving from time-based to product offerings in your service business? Are you getting more variations and phases of a project and milestones that you need to build to? So think about those changes. And let your current usage drive your requirements. You may love a Mini, it may work perfectly, but you may now need a family car. Otherwise, you're going to need to spend a lot of time putting other add-ons onto the tool that you've got. Let's delve into a bit deeper into this. So if you're a time-based business, your flow probably starts up here in a quote or an estimate. You might do that in Workflow Max, you might do that outside. So what's the time that it takes to estimate for a job, and do you want to look to recover that later on? How do you set up a job? So how does the scheduling work? Do you use job states a lot? And do you use resourcing? How do you manage when people are available, etc.? Once a job is underway, what do you think about? Do you think about your work in progress, what your estimated billings are, and what the contract stages are? And when you get to invoicing, what's your invoicing process? Do you generate some draft invoices and have people approve them if they're the job manager? Do you invoice actuals or partials? How do you work through that cycle of invoicing every month? And finally, once a job's closed, or what do you look at the helicopter view across your business? Do you focus on the productivity reports, the utilization? So thinking about those areas. If you're a time and item based business, i.e. a manufacturer, then things will change a little bit further. So you may have the same process around quoting and estimates, but once you set up a job, you're probably going to schedule some things, people, and you're also going to probably purchase some items. So you're going to be issuing purchase orders because you're manufacturing something with labor. So what's your process around that? Is it documented? Once you've got a job underway, what do you look at? Estimated billings, but you probably also spend a fair bit of time receipting and managing costs. So buying things, put it onto the job, etc. So look at those processes. And once you work further through, how do you invoice? Do you invoice based on a contract, etc.? What are the rules around that? And your invoice, and this one's quite important, is in these firms, your invoice might not show time. You may show an end product. So how do you wrap up that invoice so that you can invoice the amount and show a finished product in that space? And once the job's closed, what do you look at from a profitability and utilization point of view? So once you've worked through those processes, what can you do now? So one of the things to think about is document your processes in your flow now. Identify any efficiencies in that process. So that becomes your requirements of what you want the new tool to do. You don't want to go backwards, you want to go forwards with this. And secondly, identify areas that you can't do now. So that becomes your nice to have. So maybe these are the areas which you're working on outside of Workflow Max. So that might be a spreadsheet with resources. It might be how you save files. So those become your nice to haves that you work through in that space. How can we help you in this journey? So Ripped Orange has been using Workflow Max for over 10 years. So come in, read our blogs at our site, rippedorange.com/workflowmax. Join our user group and ask questions. We can arrange demonstrations of other systems. We can arrange to document your current usage and make recommendations and also implement either WorkGuru or ProjectWorks. And we'll also be able to train and support you in whichever system you choose. We'll also be repeating these webinars. So there's another one coming up next month. So if you want to join that, just come into rippedorange.com/workflowmax and you can sign up for that there.